the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, the metallic rhythm of cutlery against porcelain. A room full of people pretending to be alive. Then, silence. Life, my friend, is an absurd banquet. Everyone rushes to the table, hungry for pleasure, desperate to taste happiness before the candle burns out. The wise man stays seated. He watches the feast and understands the farce. Oh, forgive me. Allow me to introduce myself before you lose your appetite. My name is Arthur Schopenhauer, born at the dawn of the 19th century, when reason believed it could finally save mankind, and factories began replacing faith. I wrote The World is Will and Representation, a book too heavy for most nightstands and too honest for polite society. Since then, I've carried an unfortunate reputation, the philosopher of despair, the eternal pessimist, the grumpy bachelor who saw only the darkness of life. They call me bitter, but they forget that bitterness has roots in disappointment, and disappointment in hope. I didn't hate the world. I just loved truth more than illusion. Yes, I spoke of suffering, of the futility of desire, of life as a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. But what the caricatures miss is this. I wrote all that not out of contempt, but out of compassion, because I know pain, your pain, more intimately than you think. I have felt it, studied it, lived with it until it became my teacher. So if tonight you were expecting a cold sermon of despair, I promise you something gentler. I won't be the pessimist they warned you about. Not this evening. Tonight, I'll be the companion who has already walked through your darkness and returned with a small lamp of understanding. Stay with me, and I'll show you that even in the harshest clarity, there are lessons of peace. For the one who has suffered deeply can speak softly and mean it. You see, when you look long enough at existence, joy and despair start to blur together, like wine spilled on a white tablecloth. Everyone wants more of something, even when they don't know what it is. That endless hunger, it's the engine of the world, and the reason no one ever feels full. I once tried to join the feast. I chased success, approval, the pleasant illusion that meaning could be earned like dessert. But even at the height of satisfaction, I felt the dull hum beneath the laughter, the faint taste of ash behind the sweetness. It wasn't sadness. It was awareness, the kind that keeps you awake while everyone else is dreaming. Tell me, have you ever felt that strange fatigue? The moment after a victory, when silence creeps in and whispers, "Is that all?" You look around and realize you're surrounded by diners who keep chewing, even after the flavor is gone. You start to see the stage lights, the makeup, the trembling of the actors. And suddenly you think, perhaps I've outgrown the play. That's when loneliness begins. Not the absence of company, but the absence of illusion. You still smile, because that's polite, but inside you're asking, what's the point of all this noise? Congratulations. That question means you're still alive, just slightly ahead of schedule. People call me cynical, but I'm only honest. Life, I once wrote, swings like a pendulum, backward and forward, between pain and boredom. It wasn't an insult to existence. It was a diagnosis. And yet, even a doctor can find beauty in the heartbeat he examines. Because here's the secret. Seeing clearly doesn't have to destroy you. The pain of lucidity is simply the price of waking up. Once your eyes adjust, you begin to notice quiet wonders. The flicker of a candle, the melody hiding behind the noise. The world, though absurd, still hums with an odd kind of grace. Tonight, I'll teach you how to live among the guests without losing yourself, how to see clearly without falling into despair, how to stay at the table without swallowing the poison. There is a way to turn lucidity into calm, solitude into strength, awareness into peace. So stay with me a little longer. Let the others keep dancing. We'll just listen to the music fade. And if you enjoy wandering with strange old philosophers in the dark, you're in good company. Tolstoy stopped by once. Nietzsche too. Even Camus drifted in for a while. In Sleepless society, new companions arrive each week to bring you comfort in the darkest hours of the night. So if you wish, subscribe before the lights go out. Your seat at the table is already waiting. Now, pour yourself a glass of silence. Sit back and let me tell you why understanding too much can hurt more than ignorance ever could. I wasn't always this calm, you know. I learned serenity the hard way, the way one learns silence after shouting at a storm. When I was young, I didn't understand why everyone else seemed so comfortable inside the illusion. The children laughed, the adults talked about money or love or weather, and I just stood there, wondering why none of it felt real. I remember being told to go play. But play what exactly? Pretend the world makes sense? Pretend I'm not already thinking about death while the others are building castles out of sand? I wasn't being dramatic, just prematurely awake. That's the curse of clarity. To see the cracks in the wall before anyone else even realizes there's a wall. Seeing the world as it is, I once said, is like removing a mask at a masquerade. Everything suddenly becomes too real, too raw. And it's true. The music keeps playing, but you can't dance anymore. You stand in the middle of the room, surrounded by glitter and smiles, and all you can think is, why are they pretending not to notice? Of course, society doesn't like that question. It prefers enthusiasm, not insight. It forgives mistakes more easily than it forgives honesty. And so the intelligent man or woman or anyone who thinks too much slowly becomes an exile in their own life. You start smiling less, speaking less, and watching more. People mistake your silence for arrogance, but it's just exhaustion. I used to envy ignorance, not stupidity, ignorance. That warm, unthinking confidence of those who never ask why. They wake up, work, flirt, sleep, repeat. They don't need meaning because habit is enough. But when your mind refuses to rest, habit feels like death in slow motion. You start to notice patterns in everything, and it becomes impossible to believe that any of it matters. That's when the pendulum begins its cruel work. Life, I once wrote, swings like a pendulum, backward and forward, between pain and boredom. And sometimes, just knowing that is enough to push the pendulum to the painful side. You see, there's a quiet despair in understanding too much. You stop expecting the world to surprise you. And that's dangerous, because wonder is oxygen for the soul. Without it, even beauty fades into statistics. Even love becomes a biological function. When the curtain falls, the stage is still there, but the magic's gone. I used to think intelligence would free me, but it only built a higher prison, a transparent one, the kind where you can see everyone laughing outside while you're stuck behind glass, unable to forget that laughter has an echo. Every joke becomes a riddle, every moment of joy, a temporary illusion you're too lucid to believe in. And yet, strangely, this curse carries a seed of salvation. The same mind that tears illusions apart can also see deeper patterns. Music beneath the noise, harmony beneath the chaos. But to reach it, you must stop trying to win the game. You must learn to watch without wanting. I discovered that only later, when I stumbled upon something fragile and divine, a moment that silenced even me. It wasn't knowledge, nor logic, nor philosophy. It was something far simpler and infinitely more powerful. It was beauty. There are moments when the world forgets to scream. They arrive without warning. A piece of music drifting through an open window, sunlight trembling on the surface of a river, the slow dance of dust in a quiet room. In those brief pauses, life stops demanding and simply is. I remember the first time it happened to me. I was sitting by a lake near Frankfurt, the same restless mind still chewing on the meaning of existence, when suddenly everything went silent. Not outside, but inside. The water was moving, the birds were calling, yet the noise of wanting, of fearing, of thinking vanished. For the first time, I wasn't the observer of the world. I was the world. That, my friend, is beauty, not the kind they sell in galleries or whisper about in love poems, but the kind that erases the border between you and what you see. It's the moment when you stop reaching for life and let life reach through you. When for an instant, the endless appetite of the will falls asleep. In contemplation, I once wrote, the world stops being a marketplace. It becomes representation. The merchants of desire close their stalls. The coins of ambition fall silent, and the heart, exhausted from bargaining with reality, finally rests. And in that rest, freedom appears. It is in aesthetic contemplation that man is freed from the will. Think of it. Every symphony, every sunset, every work of art that ever moved you was not offering you new information. It was offering you a pause, a suspension of the ordinary fever called wanting. Art is not an escape from reality. It is reality relieved of its noise. Music especially speaks in a language older than thought. You don't have to understand it. In fact, understanding ruins it. Just listen. When a melody touches something inside you, it's not awakening an emotion. It's reminding you of what existed before emotion. The still center beneath the pendulum. The painters, the poets, even the daydreamers, they all seek the same medicine, to see without grasping. Beauty is not a luxury for the idle. It's survival for the lucid. For those who see too much, it offers a merciful blindness. For a few seconds, you stop dissecting the world and simply belong to it. Perhaps you felt it too. The hush when you watch rain run down a window. The way a song makes you forget your name for 3 precious minutes. That's not weakness. That's grace. It's proof that your mind, however noisy, still remembers silence. So tonight, let me show you how to find that quiet again, even when the noise of the world won't stop. You don't need a symphony, or a masterpiece, or a mountain. You need only to look fully at what already exists around you. A cup, a shadow, a single flicker of light. Look until the need to name it fades. That's where peace begins. But beauty isn't the only key. There's another, hidden door. One that opens only when you stop thinking about yourself. And beyond it lies something even deeper than serenity. Compassion. For most of my life, I believed thinking would save me. If only I could understand the world deeply enough, I thought, I might escape its cruelty. But knowledge sharpens the blade. It doesn't dull it. The more I understood, the colder my mind became. I watched humanity like an entomologist studying insects. Curious, fascinated, and secretly disgusted. Then one morning I saw a man on the street clutching his stomach in hunger. His eyes were not angry. They were tired. Something in me broke. Not from pity, but from recognition. I realized that my pain and his were not two stories, but one. That was the day philosophy lost its crown, and compassion took its throne. Once you understand suffering, you can no longer despise anyone. It's impossible. Contempt needs distance, and suffering erases distance. Behind every arrogance, every cruelty, every lie, there is fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of the same emptiness that keeps you awake at night. When I finally saw this, I stopped dividing the world into wise and foolish, strong and weak. I began to see faces instead of categories, hearts instead of opinions. I understood that the same will, the same restless hunger I once hated, beats inside us all. We are different notes of one aching symphony. We're all sitting at the same banquet, and hunger is the same. Some disguise it with ambition, others with laughter or prayer, but it's the same ache, the same desperate appetite for something we can never fully keep. That knowledge didn't make me despair. It made me gentle. For the first time, I felt something warmer than truth. Forgiveness. I no longer wanted to win arguments or prove intelligence. I wanted to understand the trembling that hides in every gesture, even the cruel ones, especially those. I began to notice how much of life is just people trying not to drown, each in their own way. The proud man boasting at the table, the jealous lover, the anxious child. They are all sending the same signal. Help me, I'm afraid. And perhaps this is what awakening truly means. Not detachment from humanity, but reunion. The moment when the philosopher stops observing the world and starts belonging to it again. You realize that everyone is carrying the same invisible weight, and suddenly the noise of life turns into a kind of prayer. I used to think the world was divided between those who cause pain and those who receive it. But no, it's just pain passing through hands, seeking somewhere soft enough to rest. When you understand that, you can't hate anymore. You simply wish to soothe. That's when I realized gentleness is the sharpest weapon of the lucid mind. It cuts through pretense, through vanity, through the armor of false strength. But to wield it, you must let go of something, the attachment to wanting. And that, my friend, is the hardest thing of all. There comes a moment when exhaustion becomes wisdom. Not the tiredness of the body, but that deeper fatigue of the soul, the one that has chased every dream, tasted every victory, and realized that none of them can fill the silence. That's when detachment begins to whisper. Most people fear that word, detachment. It sounds like giving up, doesn't it? But no, it's not defeat. It's understanding. It's the quiet nod you give the world after you've finally stopped arguing with it. Peace doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from the abandonment of desire. I learned the truth slowly, through the friction of my own wanting. I wanted recognition, love, order, meaning. Each pursuit left behind the same bitter taste. So I began to watch my desires as if they belonged to someone else. They rose, demanded, shouted, and then vanished, leaving me oddly lighter each time. When I stopped wanting life to be beautiful, it stopped being ugly. It simply was. And in that acceptance, beauty returned on its own. Not the loud, intoxicating kind, but a still beauty, like moonlight on a window or dust, dancing in the last sunbeam of the day. That's what detachment is. Not a wall, but a window. You still see the world, you just stop trying to own it. You realize how absurd it was to fight the ocean instead of learning to float. The Stoics called it tranquility, the Buddhists nirvana. I call it finally shutting up the voice that keeps asking why not more. Every philosophy I ever studied led to the same door, the one that opens only when you stop pushing. Behind it, there's no reward, no revelation, just calm. You begin to understand that nothing has to happen for you to be at peace. That peace is not the prize. It's the baseline, the place you were meant to return to all along. It's strange. The moment you stop chasing happiness, it finds you like a dog that's been following you for miles. You sit down, breathe, and suddenly everything you've been pursuing sits quietly at your feet. The world doesn't change, but your gaze does. The same noise becomes music. The same chaos becomes rhythm. I sometimes imagine all of humanity as waves, each desperate to rise higher than the next, terrified of falling back. Yet every wave forgets what the ocean never does. Rising and falling are the same movement. Detachment is remembering that you were never separate from the sea. So if tonight you feel weary of wanting, don't fight it. Let the stillness come. You're not broken for feeling empty. You're clearing space for peace to enter. What you feel is not weakness. It's the beginning of freedom. And that freedom begins when nothing is missing, in the silence within. Freedom. Everyone claims to want it, yet most chase its shadow while tightening their own chains. We call it ambition, progress, self-improvement. We say one more success, one more love, one more answer, and then I'll finally be free. But the truth is simpler and stranger. The more you chase freedom, the further it runs. Real freedom begins when wanting ends. The one who expects nothing already owns everything. When you stop bargaining with life, it stops bargaining back. The storm doesn't calm because you command it to. It calms because you stop fighting the wind. Let me guide you there for a moment. Sit as you are. You don't need to fix anything. Close your eyes. Feel your breath. Inhale softly. Let it rise like a wave. Then release. Again and again. Notice how the air enters without permission. How it leaves without struggle. What you hear isn't time slipping away. It's life giving you permission to rest. Now watch your thoughts appear, like birds landing on a quiet lake. You don't need to chase them or cage them. Just notice the ripples and let them fade. This is what presence means. Not the absence of thought, but the absence of resistance. When you stop identifying with every flicker of the mind, something astonishing happens. You begin to feel spacious. The world keeps turning, people keep rushing, but you remain still, like the eye of a hurricane. From that stillness, choices no longer feel forced. They unfold naturally, like leaves opening to light. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't shout or conquer. It's the soft authority of one who no longer fears losing anything, because nothing is owned. It's the strength of the traveler who carries no luggage. The peace of a heart that has stopped demanding to be understood. You may think this serenity belongs only to sages or saints, but look closer. You've known it before. In moments so ordinary they slip past unnoticed. Watching rain trace lines on glass. Listening to footsteps echo down an empty street. Those small instants of stillness weren't accidents. They were reminders of your natural state. The world will still test you. Pain will visit. Joy will fade. Plans will collapse. But freedom means you can let these things pass through you without erasing you. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the witness, not the wound. And what if peace could exist even inside despair? What if the night wasn't something to escape, but a place to walk through, quietly? Night again. The same night that once terrified me now greets me like an old friend. It stretches wide above the world, vast, silent, endless, and yet alive with hidden light. You see, darkness isn't the absence of light. It's its canvas. I used to think the night was proof that existence was empty, that everything dissolved into blackness. Now I know better. The night is full of echoes, of whispers, of all the things that daylight blinds us to. For so long, I wanted to escape this world. I thought freedom meant leaving it behind, outthinking it, correcting it, proving I was stronger than its absurdity. I wanted to build a philosophy so powerful that it could silence pain. But pain doesn't disappear when you look away from it. It only softens when you finally look into it. There was a time I believed the mind was the only tool worth trusting. It could cut through illusion, dissect every false promise, expose the farce behind the banquet. But after years of slicing the world apart, I realized something terrible. The scalpel of reason can wound as easily as it heals. Understanding too much without loving enough. That's the true tragedy of intelligence. And yet, through the cracks that knowledge created, something began to shine. It wasn't joy, not at first. It was awareness, calm, tender, almost maternal. I started to see that lucidity itself could become a form of grace. When you stop trying to force meaning onto life, meaning begins to appear quietly on its own, like morning light slipping under a door. The world, my friend, is not to be escaped but contemplated, like sad, beautiful music. You don't need to dance to it or conduct it. Just listen. Let it wash through you. Every note of joy, every chord of sorrow, they belong to the same song. It took me years to understand that harmony doesn't mean perfection. It means coexistence. I used to think wisdom meant rising above the human condition. Now I believe wisdom is kneeling before it, eyes open, heart unarmed. To live lucidly is not to float above pain, but to touch it with gentleness, to feel its texture and say, yes, you belong too. When I look back now, I see my life as a long apprenticeship in acceptance. First came the loneliness of seeing too much, the exile of clarity. Then came the beauty that silenced thought, the refuge of art. After that, compassion, the softening of a once proud heart. And finally, detachment, not as coldness, but as release. The chain of wanting broke link by link, until I could finally breathe without asking the air to taste better. Peace doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from the abandonment of desire. I learned that the hard way, but the moment I stopped wanting life to be beautiful, it stopped being ugly. It simply was. And that was enough. When you stop trying to wrestle with life, something magical happens. It starts to move with you instead of against you. The same world that once mocked you becomes your teacher. The same silence that once frightened you becomes your companion. The same clarity that once cut you open becomes the light that guides you home. Lucidity is not a curse. It's a higher form of sensitivity, the proof that you're fully alive. To see clearly, even when it hurts, is an act of courage, but also of love. Most people protect themselves from truth by drowning in distraction. You, however, have stayed awake through the night. That makes you rare. That makes you free. And freedom, real freedom, isn't about getting everything you want. It's about no longer needing to. The one who expects nothing already owns everything. When you stop demanding that life perform for you, you begin to see it for what it truly is. A fragile miracle, trembling between chaos and calm. You may still feel the ache of being human, the hunger, the longing, the uncertainty. But even that becomes sacred when you stop resisting it. Suffering, too, is part of the music. It gives depth to the notes, warmth to the melody. Imagine a world without shadows. Nothing would have shape. Nothing would have meaning. Light only matters because darkness exists. Now close your eyes. Feel your breath. Let it rise and fall. The air moves through you, effortless, unowned. What you hear isn't time slipping away. It's life giving you permission to rest. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to prove you've learned enough, loved enough, become enough. The night accepts you exactly as you are. Look around you, or rather within you. The banquet is still there, the same absurd feast as before. People chasing laughter, ambition, love, distraction. But tonight, you don't need to join the race for flavor. You've learned to taste life without devouring it, to observe without contempt, to love without possession, to exist without explanation. That's the secret I came to share. The world isn't too loud. Your soul just listens too well. And that's your gift. Don't curse it. Cultivate it. Let it make you tender, not bitter. Let it remind you that even sensitivity, when understood, is strength in disguise. The ability to feel deeply is not a flaw. It's the last honest thing left in us. So stay at the table. Watch the feast without disgust. Taste the wine, look at the candles, and rest. Tomorrow, you'll see the banquet differently. You'll notice new colors in the faces around you, new notes in the noise. You'll understand that life doesn't need to be fair to be beautiful, nor perfect to be worth living. When you wake, remember this. peace was never somewhere to arrive. It was here all along, waiting behind the noise, behind the wanting, behind the fear. You were never lost, only distracted. The night you feared was not a void, it was your mirror. Now breathe. Let the mind fall silent, like dust on an old book closing softly. The feast continues, but you no longer need to feed on it. You found the taste of stillness, that quiet sweetness that never runs out. And if you ever forget it, you know where to return. Here, among old thinkers who couldn't sleep, whispering across the centuries, still searching, still wondering, still awake. So rest now. The candle burns low, the hall grows quiet, and the music fades. The world hums softly in the dark, absurd and beautiful. And finally, you understand. That's enough.